Hey all, so this is a second update of this build in Atlas Invasion Hardcore. This is actually progressing quite well. The build has now reached level 90, which is pretty nice. I think it's like Occultist rank 2 or something, but either way, the damage scaling is getting a lot better. So I'm just going to go over some of the quick changes I've done and kind of also how I'm progressing further into the end game. Though I'm kind of exactly at the brick wall I was kind of talking about in the last update, which is more to do with, I think, damage and sort of a mix of survivability. So, first off, I'd like to go over kind of how I'm playing the build. So, a lot of the times you'll see, I think the other two occultists are just running a 6-link Vortex, which may actually just be better. But I opted for Creeping Frost because I just like the playstyle. It's kind of better to be able to actually kite bosses, because you get to cast Cold Snap here and there, but the boss can move quite a bit, so Creeping Frost allows you to kind of adjust to boss movement, and Vortex is just going on in the background. The only downside to this setup is that it takes a lot of mana, and so this is kind of where I've made a couple changes, and you can notice I'm not running a Mana Flask, because I have enough regen, so a lot of this comes from the tree. So first off, I got a Replica Conqueror's Efficiency. It's one of my favorite jewels. It's not really easy to get in hardcore, I think, but a couple people have been doing heist and they've become available in the market, so I picked one up when I could. Another thing that I'm taking is nodes up here, just some mana regen nodes, and I also anointed Prodigal Perfection and also Path towards it to get Misty Bulwark, which is really nice because I'm spell block capped essentially, one off, and I get 74% mana regen just off of that, which is really, really helpful. Besides that, there's like a couple nodes over here that I could also take if need be for mana recovery, but that's only on kills, so during bosses you'll run out of mana. Another thing I'm doing for mana cost is I'm running Inspiration Support, which is also pretty functional because we just get more elemental damage from the charges. And I'm running a non-channeling minus mana cost. It's really kind of a lot to just scale down the mana cost to be able to run this setup. But at this point, I'm like pretty invested and decided that I'm just gonna run 3 cold dots. And one of the nice things about cold dots is that you can actually stack all of them. So the maximum damage would actually be being able to cast a Vortex, Creeping Frost, and Cold Snap on a boss, and then just kind of like running and cursing it. But again, this is kind of just my setup. I also run Arcane Surge on Cold Snap as opposed to anything else. I don't really care as much about the DPS from Cold Snap because it's really on a shorter cooldown. I know my Vortex and Creeping Frost are probably going to be the biggest DPS. So I just try to run Bone Chill and Hypothermia to really get the maximum amount of Creeping Frost and Vortex as possible. And it kind of works out because the Arcane Surge duration kind of lines up with the Cold Snap cooldown. So yeah, it's pretty nice. As far as changes I made to the actual build gearing wise, I think that this one is probably going to stay with me for a while, so there's not much I can do with that. So it's kind of just, I mean, it's really hard to craft a better one. I would just want better spell damage, realistically, with the +1 and Cold Dot Multi as high as I can get it. If I need to craft it, so be it. I got a nice Chaos Res ring. I need to divine this with Harvest, but it's functionally there. Again, more Chaos Res on boots and stuff. I'm really just trying to cap out Chaos Res. I'm at 47%, which is enough to deal with most things that aren't named Chayula. And I think overall, though, the build is at a place where the gear is like going to be harder to improve without breaking into T14s and 16s and getting like influenced. Ideally, I could slam this shield with a Warlord's Exalt so I can get possible area of effect, which is really nice for this build. Or I can just get max fire res, which is also not bad. But I think that is probably the next plan. If I can get Leo slams, I'll probably slam some of the gear. The 6-link I would have liked if it didn't hit hybrid, that I could craft on Life Gained SES, which would have been probably better than this. I might honestly recraft this once I get a couple more greeds. But I'm really just looking for an empty prefix to be able to craft that, benchcraft that. There's still a lot to be improved here. I've been crafting a bunch of cold dot jewels, but none of them have really hit life, so it's kind of a moot point. I swapped over from a mana flask to a sulfur flask, so it's a bit more damage there. And as of right now, the only real weakness this build has is damage over time. One of the options is taking left shade. I don't like the playstyle because if you have increased like duration, it's a little sketchy if you don't have a way to remove some of them, so I don't really like that. But it is a nice way to kind of counteract really nasty bleeds. But I have logout macro and life flask that for bleed anyways, so it's kind of just poisons I need to worry about, which don't really stack that fast or just aren't really that common in the content I'm playing. So yeah, and as far as Atlas goes, I'm basically just hard farming Haywark for essences. I've taken the 2 essence nodes and a harvest, so it's really just crafting gear. And I'm going to try to break into Glennakarns. This is where I'm going to get more Abyss nodes and farm Stygians. Hopefully I can sell to just make more currency. And so kind of the idea right now is to get as much currency as possible, just so I can have like a safety net in case this character dies. I can make a new one pretty fast as opposed to having to essentially start from scratch. But I'm still going to invest pretty heavily into this character because it is kind of the end-all be-all right now. And I would really like to push this character to 95 if possible, but that's kind of just something that will happen if I can play right. And with the current like number of levels, I'm kind of done with getting big points. I was going to path over here for cold dot multi, but I decided to actually go for the exposure and chill, which gives us just a lot more damage. And this LE damage leeches ES is pretty nice for sustaining it. I saw that I have like 2k ES, so it's like kind of worth to just run it anyways. Because if we're just like hitting a boss with Creeping Frost, it'll kind of leech it back. And besides that, there's not really much else. I could take more life down here, which is probably the next step. But I think if I can craft a decent jewel, then 2 points, 2 levels for it is definitely worth it. Anyways, I'm probably gonna keep playing this Atlas event until the end of it. I think it's a lot of fun, especially in Hardcore Trade League. It's not something I've never played. It's kind of a cool concept to be able to balance, you know, like cost efficiency, and so you can focus on making currency to build your character. But with the rarity of like good items in a Hardcore Trade League, it's also kind of about knowing like when you need to just craft it yourself and like how to craft it yourself, and you know what content you can run for that. So honestly, in the near future, I think I'm gonna just be delving a lot more, which is what I've been doing. So a bit deeper delving just to get some like easy currency, especially from cities. And then I have an entire highest locker of just like contracts I haven't really looked at that I need to run, and those can be really easy currency as well. From there, that's when I can start improving the character. And one of the nice things about Trade League is you can kind of ride off of the sort of cracked out players who have T14s to 16s en masse just on farm, and so they're getting influence rares and whatnot that you can buy. So it's kind of a way to progress if you want to take it easily and safely, which is what I've been doing. But I think I'm going to start to break into T14s and 16s. But for now, that is all. Updates will probably come in again and again, so see you in the next one.